Oh, thank you for coming back to Crush'em TV. A new study out supports the claim by Trump that 5.7 million illegals cast votes illegally. There is a research group in New Jersey that has taken a fresh look at post-election polling data and concluded that the number of non-citizens voting illegally in U.S. elections is likely far greater than previous estimates. As many as 5.7 million non-citizens may have voted in the 2008 election, which had elected Barack Obama into the White House. And if you remember right, the DNC back then was actively campaigning in California and other places to register illegals to vote, and there is video out there, if you go Google it, where you can find Obama directly telling illegals to go vote, coming out of his mouth, not somebody else's claims. The research organization is called Just Facts. It's a widely cited independent think tank. They're not Republican, they're not Democrat, they're not connected to anybody. This is an independent, led by self-described conservatives and libertarians, revealed its number crunching in a report on national immigration. Just Facts President James D. Agresti and his team took a look at the data from an extensive Harvard YouGov study that every 2 years questions a sample size of tens of thousands of voters. Some acknowledged that they are non-citizens and ineligible to vote, so some admitted it. Just Facts conclusions confronts both sides in the illegal voting debate, those who say it happens a lot and those who say it doesn't. In one camp, there are groundbreaking studies by professors at Old Dominion, the university in Virginia, who attempted to compile scientifically derived illegal voting numbers using the same Harvard data. They're called the Cooperative Congressional Election Study. On the other side are the professors who conducted the study and contended that zero non-citizens of about 18 million adults in the U.S. voted. The liberal mainstream media decided to adopt that position, obviously, and proclaim the Old Dominion work was debunked. The ODU professors, who stand by their work on the face of attacks from the left, concluded that in 2008 as few as 38,000 and as many as 2.8 million non-citizens voted. In order to come up with that, they had to make some assumptions, which we'll get into in a little bit. Mr. Agresti's analysis of the same polling data settled on much higher numbers. He estimated that as many as 7.9 million citizens were illegally registered that year. 7.9 million. And 594,000 up to 5.7 million voted. These numbers are more in line with the unverified estimates given by Trump, who said that the number of ballots cast by non-citizens was the reason for the difference in the popular vote, which primarily came out of California and San Diego. Last month, the president signed an executive order setting up a commission to try to find on-the-ground truth in illegal voting, headed by the Vice President Mike Pence. The panel also will look at outdated voter lists across the nation with names of dead people and multiple registrants. For 2012, Just Facts said, 3.2 million to 5.6 million non-citizens were registered to vote, and 1.2 million to 3.6 million voted. Mr. Agresti lays out his reasoning in a series of complicated calculations, which he compares to the U.S. Census Bureau figures for non-citizen residents. Polls show non-citizens vote overwhelmingly Democratic, because Democrats, as evidenced by videos of Clinton and Obama, where they basically tell them flat out, go vote. The details are technical, but the figure I calculated is based on a more conservative margin of sampling error and methodology that I consider to be more accurate. He believes the Harvard YouGov researchers based their zero claim on two very flawed assumptions. First, they assumed that people who said they voted and identified a candidate did not vote unless their names showed up in a database. Does that make sense? I don't believe it does. No, they said they voted, so you should believe them that they said they voted. But this other study, if their name didn't show up in the database, they decided to call them a liar. Well, it's very common for those people to use false identities. And that's what he says. He says this is illogical because such databases are unlikely to verify voters who use fraudulent identities, and millions of non-citizens use them. So if they said they voted, you should take them at their word that they voted. You know, you shouldn't rule them out just because their name didn't show up, because their real name and the name they voted under are unlikely to match because they use illegal, fraudulent identities in order to pull this off. I mean, it's common sense. He cites government audits that show large numbers of non-citizens use false IDs and social security numbers in order to function in the U.S., which could include voting. Now, I live here in San Antonio, and I can tell you right now, I can go to Craigslist as we speak, and I can type in stuff for something like getting a car, and in the ads, all this stuff to get fake IDs is right there. I've even turned it into the cops, and they still haven't shut them down. I mean, they flat out tell you that they'll give you fake license plates, fake IDs. They show examples of their work. I mean, it's crazy how open they are about it, and the cops don't shut them down. I don't know why. Second, Harvard also assumed that respondent citizens sometimes misidentified themselves as non-citizens, but also concluded that non-citizens never misidentified themselves as citizens. Now that's illogical too. This is irrational because illegal immigrants often claim they're citizens in order to conceal the fact that they are in the U.S. illegally. So the other assumption that the Harvard study did doesn't make any sense. They assumed that actual citizens sometimes accidentally say that they're not on these forms, which I'm sure that does happen. But then they assumed that illegals never ever say that they're citizens. In what world does that make sense? There is no logic to that. You know, I'm sure most illegals lie and say they are citizens on those forms. Why? So that they don't get in trouble. I mean, that's just common sense. So the Harvard study had two very serious flaws. So once you eliminate those, you come up with the numbers that Agresti did. Some of the polled non-citizens denied they were registered to vote when publicly available databases show that they were. This conclusion, he said, is backed by the Harvard YouGov study's findings of consumer and vote data matches for 90% of participants, but only 41% of non-citizen respondents. As to why his numbers are higher than the besieged ODU professor study, Mr. Agresti said, I calculated the margin of sampling error in a more cautious way to ensure greater confidence in the results. And he's right. And I used a slightly different methodology that I believe is more accurate. And again, he's right. Those two assumptions by the Harvard study are extremely flawed, and anybody with any common sense can see that. There's hard evidence outside of polling that non-citizens do vote. Conservative activists have conducted limited investigations in Maryland and Virginia that found thousands of illegal aliens were registered on the rolls. These inquiries, such as comparing non-citizen jury pool rejections to voter rolls, captured just a small snapshot, but conservatives say it shows there is a much broader problem that a comprehensive probe by the Pence Commission should uncover. The Public Interest Legal Foundation, which fights voter fraud, released one of the most comprehensive reports last month. Its investigation found that Virginia removed more than 5,500 non-citizens from voter lists, including 1,852 people who had cast over 7,000 ballots. The people volunteered their status, most likely when acquiring driver's licenses, which means the only reason they were caught was because they told on themselves. Imagine all the ones that haven't told on themselves. You know, the Public Interest Legal Foundation said there are likely many more illegal voters on Virginia's rolls who have never admitted to being non-citizens. So there you have it. That's there. I will link the article. There are links in here where you can dig further if you wish to. But the fact is, it's true. And the evidence is right there, and the people claiming zero made serious flaws, which are self-evident in their assumptions. So if you like what you see here, like, subscribe, donate to the Patreon so that I can keep on doing it. And you have a happy July the 4th. Take care and stay safe.